Hello, 8 John. Good afternoon. Hello to Mr. Sabtu if you're there. Thank you very much for putting on the video. I'd like to start with a little passage from a book by the current editor of the Oxford English Dictionary, John Simpson. And he's talking about the time when he worked at the concise Oxford Dictionary of Proverbs. So he had the privilege or the struggle of going through every single proverb known in the English language and seeing when they were first used and what meaning did they have back then. This is what he says. And so I spent the next year, which expanded to 18 months, writing out by hand. They didn't have computers then, as you did in those days, the entire text of a concise Oxford Dictionary of Proverbs. By the end, I could speak fluently in old Sid saws and offer trite truisms on demand to anyone who approached me with a problem. One man may steal a horse, while another may not look over a hedge. A stern chase is a long chase. Near is my shirt, but nearer is my skin. The best thing for the inside of a man or woman is the outside of a horse. Meaning, take some exercise. Little pitchers, children, have large ears. Bairns, children, and fools should not see half-done work. If you lie down with dogs, you will rise up with fleas. A saying translated from the Roman sage or wise man, Seneca. And lastly, the looker-on sees more of the game. Proverbs were universal truths, or what passed as these, normally presented in sentence form. Some were abstract, of the hope springs eternal variety, but many evolved from the home and the hearth of the medieval peasant. And so their subjects were often homely subjects. Cats, dogs, friends, the weather, which is raining now, church going, food, and drink. They were extraordinary, colorful, reassuring adjuncts. Adjuncts meaning helpers, assistants to everyday conversation. That's John Simpson for you. Remember, the best thing for the inside of a man is the outside of a horse. Good. The reason why I read that to you is to just expand your understanding of where Proverbs come from. They don't just appear out of thin air. They come from a time and place of the medieval peasant, and they've been used over and over again to give advice till the point where now we say things like, don't fight fire with fire. Or in the case of our English course book, one should fight fire with fire. Now take out your learning book 1, and flip to the page where you defined those 5 proverbs containing the word fire. You should have these proverbs, and go to number 1. Now, the goal of this lesson is to practice taking notes. The last time I think we breezed through this segment where I just gave you the Cambridge definition for each of these proverbs without really explaining to you why I took the notes that I took. So today, I'm going to demonstrate to you how I came up with each of those notes. And because it's done spontaneously, the notes that I give you today will be different than the notes from, when was it? Tuesday. So look at this one. Proverbs Unit 1, question 2a. Here, I make a note about this definition. And the way I do that is I look at all the definitions, every single one of them, and I come up with my own judgment. So, can you see whether there's a difference between my definition and the Cambridge definition? Can you see something different between my definition and the online definition? My definition says, out of the frying pan and into the fire means coming out of one trouble and being thrown immediately into another. Now, the Cambridge definition says something different. It says going from a bad situation to a worse one. What are the differences? Now, when we bridge our knowledge with another piece of knowledge, we effectively learn where we are and how to get to that piece of knowledge. Now, this doesn't mean that Cambridge is always right. It just means that they have a certain way of understanding things, and especially in terms of definitions, they have the manpower and people power. They have the employees who have done the research into where these words come from. So I think it's good to just consider what they say with a lot of weight. But we shouldn't take them as the be-all and end-all, as the ultimate source of truth. So here, I'm just going to write a definition. Sorry, I'm going to not write a definition, but I'm going to give you a note. Give you a note about these definitions. And the simplest way to write your own note is to give your own opinion. So you can say, I think my definition could add the dimension of consequence. And then I elaborate by adding another clause. A clause is a bunch of words where the progression is from something bad to something worse. Now that's all I need to do. And in writing my own note, I understand my own view on the proverb as well as how I could think of it differently. Now, all you're doing now is just watching. I'm going to go through a few notes on making your own notes. Firstly, you should start with I think. That's one way of giving notes, which is to give an opinion. You may start with this is, where you make a statement. This definition is clear because it uses precise vocabulary like worse and bad. Make a statement. You could also start with the only difference is, if you notice that there's one difference, the only difference is my definition was focused on comparing two similar things, whereas the Cambridge definition saw that one thing was going from something bad to something worse. So you could compare two items. And one more way you could make your own notes is to describe the difference. Look at the way this part of the Cambridge definition is phrased. Look at the way using the word you makes this definition more informal. So you could describe the difference. And that's different with comparing two items because you're really trying to describe what it is that's different. More notes on making notes. When making notes, try not to criticize yourself by saying, that was stupid. Or try not to say you were wrong by putting a big X on your answer. There are no instances of being wrong. There are just inaccuracies. Your answer is just not quite right. Instead, you should just write down what you notice. Give an analysis, not a judgment. We've been through all of that the last time, but I just wanted to be sure that it's clear. And to be even clearer, what I'm going to do now is to demo for you another time. So look at the definitions for there's no smoke without fire. Look at all three. And yours might differ, so you could look at your own as well. Now, when I make notes, my arrow could point anywhere. In this case, I'm going to point it at the Cambridge definition. And the last time I made a note that was about my opinion, this time I'm going to give a statement. I'm going to say this is. or instead of this is, I might write this definition contains a layer comprised of rumors. And one way of learning more about the topic that we're studying about is by making a statement, by giving a view of the topic. So I might say Proverbs are about giving advice. It may be beneficial to think of the type of advice a proverb is trying to provide. So when we write this statement, even though it's very obvious, we've gone through it before, Proverbs give advice, but when we write our definition, this definition here, my definition, did not really give advice. It just stated that one thing cannot exist without another being close by. If I had thought a little bit further, I might have come up with a different definition, one that is giving advice by saying there are often good causes for a judgment. Do you see how that's different from one thing cannot exist without another being close by? There are often good causes for judgments. And that would be closer to the Cambridge definition and the online definition. So this note is about making a statement. Now we're going to go to another note where we will be comparing two items. One should fight fire with fire. Look at the three definitions and try to come up with a comparison statement. My definition says, equal a force with a comparable force, rise up strongly against an attack. The Cambridge definition states that a serious threat should be equally resisted, and the online definition states to use the same methods as someone else in order to defeat them. Now this time again, I'm going to point the arrow to the Cambridge definition, and actually the arrows, I would say, there should be two arrows pointed this way. So let's do this. Alright. This arrow is a little bit too bland. Let's make it darker. Right. So the difference between my definition and the other two is the emphasis on medieval war strategy. Now, this is quite a stretch here because there are no mentions of knights or the cavalry being brought in. So sometimes I don't have the exact words to describe what I want, but what I'm doing is I am trying to generate my own thoughts. So if I don't know how to say that the Cambridge definition and the online definition use vocabulary that is more relevant in times of war, I might just say the emphasis on medieval war strategy. And I always like to elaborate. And based on what we read earlier from John Simpson, we can make a statement about Proverbs by saying Proverbs were first used in the medieval household. When we think of them, we may consider the circumstances of that era. Now, can you see why this last sentence helps me to learn a little bit more about Proverbs? Not only does it refresh our memory on the origins of Proverbs, but it helps us to remind ourselves to imagine these proverbs as being from that time. Now, I want to point out one thing here. It might be useful to add a little bracket saying English proverbs, because there are proverbs from different parts of the world. And we only know that English proverbs, from what we read earlier, has a distinct history from medieval times. So we cannot generalize. Now that's a third way of making notes. I think we are very much about to hit the 24-minute mark in our recording. So I think I would like to move on to the tasks for today, to get your hands moving. So the first thing you have to do today is to take notes about taking notes. So take 5 to 10 minutes to write down everything on this page. And when you're done, take down everything on this page. You may write in full sentences or in note form. The point of this exercise is to get you to have a ready-made list so that you can easily take notes the next time. See, I made a little note about taking notes as well. And I used this list just now as I was trying to come up with the different notes. So go ahead. Actually, before you do that, I am going to tell you the homework for today. There is always homework. If not Jack and Jill, will be a dull boy and girl. There are no Jacks and Jills in this class, right? So let's look at this. Take this away. Oh, by the way, I'm going to show you this image because it will come in handy tomorrow. What do you think this image is about? What scene? What do you think people are doing? Now let's do this. Alright, for your homework, oh, it's not there yet. For your homework, first, take notes on taking notes. Look at the 2 slides and take notes based on those 2 slides. So when everybody is done with the first slide, you may put the video cursor at the second slide and then have everybody copy the second slide. Next, this is just a reminder. We went through this on Tuesday, how to complete your index and number your pages for all 3 books. So please go ahead and finish that if you haven't already. Next, based on today's lesson, go back and review your notes on the proverb definitions. Look and make your own analysis as to whether you're an excellent note taker or you could revise those notes to help you learn a little bit more. We'll be making a lot of our own notes this year, so it's best to start now. Next, tomorrow I hope to be back in action. So please prep for tomorrow's class by looking at Unit 1, Text 1A of the course book. It is a report of, well, I won't tell you, it's written there. If not, I will ruin some suspense. So understand the events that happen in that account, that report, and tomorrow we'll go through it. If there are any words you don't understand, maybe just take a peek in an online dictionary. And lastly, I did not write this down, but I will right now. Lastly, on Tuesday we had a very special announcement. So today I'm going to write it in pink. Please get those posters drawn, colored, up. Oops, colored up. Okay, and I want to show you one image. Is it here? No. I'm going to show you an image of a poster that I found recently. And you can use this as inspiration. Oh, I don't know where it is. Oh, here it is. Okay. Let's see. Don't dig your own grave with your own knife and fork. English proverb. So, what does this mean? Does it mean that it will take a long time to dig your grave if you only use a knife and fork? Or does it mean something else? So here's an example of a different kind of poster, a one that doesn't have a hand-drawn image but has a backing photo. So this is something you can do as well. However, make sure that the photo is something that you've taken yourself and that you've made yourself. So what does this mean? Don't do something that leads to your own downfall. So maybe dig your own grave with a shovel instead of a teaspoon or a knife and fork. Okay, John, that's all for today. Thank you, Mr. Sabtu. See you hopefully tomorrow.